Coming up on episode 65 of Creative Writing, I'm talking with Lindsay Ostrom from Pinch of Young all about monetizing your passion.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hello and welcome to Creative Writing, the podcast for writers, bloggers, and creatives who are trying to build an online platform without being smarmy. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and I am so glad that you are here today listening to the podcast. This is episode 65, and I am in the middle of a kind of month-long discussion with different food bloggers in anticipation of speaking at Food Blogger Pro, which I'm thrilled and just so excited to do next month in October. So we're talking to food bloggers. Now, I know you guys, and I know a lot of you are not food bloggers. And so you may be wondering, why should I listen to this next month of episodes? I will tell you why. First of all, let me tell you something about me. I'm that kind of person where I am very curious and I like to pull sort of lessons out of the most unlikely of places. I don't even want to tell you some of the bizarre topics that I talked about when I was working for a church doing youth ministry. But I like to find inspiration and find things that I can learn from in a variety of places. So I like to talk to different people. If you've noticed, the guests on my show have ranged from full-time musicians to publishers to writers and bloggers and kind of everything in between. So here's what I want to say about food bloggers. They are some of the smartest bloggers around, and there are some great lessons to be learned, whether you are a full-time blogger or not, or have anything to do with food, or set fires in your kitchen like I do on a weekly basis. Literally 2 days ago, oven fire. It happens. So I just want you guys to know, if you're thinking, oh man, I can just tune out for the next month. No, you can't, because you would be missing some great lessons. Like today, we're going to be talking to Lindsay Ostrom, who's the other half of Pinch of Yum. And if you remember, just a couple episodes ago, I talked with Bjork Ostrom in episode 61 and 62, all about a lot of things, tech stuff, how to kind of make it long-term in your business. And so he and Lindsay are married and they started Pinch of Yum together, and he did kind of the tech side and the behind the scenes, and then launched their membership site, which they really built together, but mostly that's kind of his baby and where he hangs out, and she mostly hangs out at Pinch of Yum with all the great recipes. So we're talking today on the podcast all about what it means to kind of monetize your passion. And this is a really important question for you. It doesn't matter what your passion is or how you're trying to monetize it. It's really important to think about what that looks like and that balance. So we'll kind of circle back to that. But just so you know, don't miss out on these episodes if you're not feeling the food blogging thing. It's okay. I'm going to pull out some great things that I think are learnable. That's not a word. I'm going to pull out some great things that I think will have value for you guys. Is that a better way to say it? Okay, I think so. So before we get started, I want to tell you about 3 free things for you. Yes, free things. So the first one is that I am finally putting together my course site. And I have a couple of courses that I have put together, the Foundation series and Own Your List, which I'm actually right in the middle of relaunching. I guess I'm not relaunching. I'm finishing up and about to relaunch it. But I decided to, after a year of thinking about courses and where I wanted them hosted and how I wanted them to look, I want them on my own site. I'm a control freak. What can I say? So I am building out a site. And if you go to creativewriting.com/courses, you will go and find my courses. And the thing that I'm doing right now, and I probably will do this for a while, I don't know if I'll take these down, but I'm giving you a free module of the Foundation series, which the Foundation series is all about how to apply your why to your blog, your email list, your social media, and your images to have a more cohesive and clarified vision and strategy. So it's kind of a mini course. There's only 4 modules, but each video is like an hour, if not more. And so you're going to get a lot out of it. You get to have the first module for free and learn about how to apply your why to your blog. Again, you'll find that at creativewriting.com/courses. And then you can also see the first module, the newly updated Own Your List. And I'm really thrilled about this. And so you can go over there, get a peek at what you can have. I don't have the sales card or anything else up. The site is very bare bones, but you can learn a lot just from the free stuff right over there. So it's createifwriting.com/courses. And then I have 2 affiliate things to tell you about. And again, if you guys are wondering about all this affiliate marketing stuff, I did talk about that in a previous episode, and you should definitely go back and listen. And of course, I don't have the episode right in front of me now, but scroll back a little bit in your feed and you're going to find it where I talk about affiliate stuff and how this works. But these are 2 free resources for you. However, there is a commission for me for referral, especially if you buy something. So I'm just telling you about them. I don't promote every affiliate opportunity that comes my way. Some of them don't work, but these are 2 that I think are good for you guys. So the first is a book. I've mentioned it before. It's called Digital Freedom, and you can find your free copy at createifwriting.com/digital freedom. And this is a book all about how to make money in online business. So for those of you guys who are trying to kind of get started and figuring out, okay, do I want to do affiliate marketing? Is that kind of gross? I don't know. Or should I try writing books or building products or courses? This is a great book that kind of gives you an overview of what has worked for a couple guys that are full-time, super successful, living the dream. So you can find that at createifwriting.com/digital freedom. And then the second thing is one that I am so excited about because, hey, email lists, and it's a new summit that is coming out that is called the List Building School. And it's amazing. And it's being put on by Naveed Moazzez, who is basically the king of online summits. Okay. So I know it's going to be good. I've seen the lineup. Some of my favorite people are speaking on topics I cannot wait to hear about, like how to grow your list by thousands with one content upgrade in a post. So I cannot wait for that. And then Regina from By Regina speaking, love her. So it's going to be really, really good. They are offering right now a free playbook, which is kind of the things that are working to build lists in 2016. You can find that and register for the summit. So get your free download, register for the summit. All of this is free at createifwriting.com/list. And I'll leave links to all of this in the show notes as well. And you're going to be able to find those at createifwriting.com/065. Basically, if I haven't said enough, you just get thee over to my site, okay? And you'll find all the things you need there. Okay, I'm diving into the interview now with Lindsay. All right, well, on today's episode, we're talking to Lindsay Ostrom from Pinch of Yum. How are you doing, Lindsay?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so glad to get to talk to you. So Pinch of Yum is a food blog that is so popular, and it's very clear if you go over and have been there why it's so popular. It's got great photography, great recipes, and just a very personable style, which I love and makes it very accessible to the reader. So I really love your blog, first of all, I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, how did you get started, kind of both with cooking and also with blogging?
Well, we kind of have like an accidental starting story, or startup story. So I just really loved cooking. And when Bjork and I got married, it was almost 6 years ago now. When we got married, like it was really fun for me to try new recipes, and you know, I was looking for recipes online. I wasn't necessarily like familiar with blogs and what they were about or anything, but I would find recipes, I would make them, and then usually I would just share them on Facebook, you know, and say, hey, this is what I made for dinner or whatever. And it kind of got to the point where like I was really enjoying it, but we also felt like, or I remember saying to Bjork, like, hey, I'm probably going to lose all my friends because I just keep posting these annoying recipe links or whatever. So that was kind of when we started the conversation about like, hey, what would it be like to start a blog? And I remember saying to Bjork, like, well, how could I ever have a food blog? Like, I don't really know, like, I haven't gone to culinary school and I don't really know officially like how to cook, you know, formally. I'm just kind of experimenting and learning. And he knew more about, you know, he's always been really interested in like internet business and kind of, I don't know, anything on the internet basically. And so he was like, well, you don't have to be an expert. You know, you can just start. You can just write about your experiments and everything. And so that was kind of how it started. It was just like, well, should we do this? Okay. And I just started out by like posting things that I liked. A lot of times they were recipes. Like I would just link to another recipe and say, hey, I made this recipe. Or they would be pictures of like things that I was trying, products that I was trying or anything like that. It started like it was really, you can actually go and look if you go to pinchofyum.tumblr.com and then like go to the archives and go all the way back to the beginning. You can see, what it was like when we started, which is really nothing fancy. It was like so basic. But that's kind of how we got started into blogging.
I think sometimes there are great things that happen by accident. And I think they happen by accident because you don't always know like necessarily what your passion is or what something could become until, you either find yourself, like you said, getting really, really into it and just realizing like all you're posting is food things, or people start to tell you start to hear from people like, I love this. Will you do this more? And then it kind of happens naturally. So accidentally or naturally, maybe a combination of both. But I feel like sometimes you really end up in that right place when it happens in that way.
Yep, for sure. And I would have never, like when we started, it was definitely a hobby. I really liked it, but I don't think I really knew that I had this side of me that was like interested in the internet and interested in growing a business and all of this other stuff. So I feel like a lot of that, started as an accident and then became more intentional as time went on.
Well, so when did you then have sort of that conversation where you decided to see if you could make money? Because I know you guys have talked about, you shared your income for years and talked about it kind of as an experiment, I guess. But.
Yeah. So we, I'm trying to think, that would have been, I think it was like 2011. I started the blog in 2010. And so for a year or maybe even more than a year, like that wasn't even a thing. It was just like, I'm doing this strictly for fun. And I think there have been like different metrics along the way. So like in the beginning, it was just for me, like it's just for me to see, I don't know, just to put stuff out there. And then it kind of became about traffic. So like, that was one of the metrics where I was like, oh my gosh, this post had 50 people that came to it. Like this is popular, quote unquote popular. Yeah. This is my popular post. This is my viral post. And so, kind of paying attention to that. And that became kind of a metric. And then I think like as we started to see the growth with that, with the traffic as our initial metric, we started to realize and kind of through talking to other bloggers, that, hey, maybe we want to put ads on the site and maybe this is something we want to do. And I remember that being like a really big decision where we were like, okay, are we going to have ads or are we not going to have ads? And I think we kind of had this idea like, well, you're just selling out if you put ads on your site. But we tried to see it as more of like you said, like an experiment because there really weren't any resources out there at the time. And I feel like there are more now, but there still aren't a ton on, specifically for food blogs, like how that can become a business. And Bjork had one of the like really influential things for him in his thinking, and then obviously our thinking was reading this book called Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. And it's kind of all about this idea, like if you have a passion and you're really excited about something and you want to build a business with something, basically you can, like it is possible, and you can do this with any area that you're interested in. And then on the flip side, we had heard from several people and read several things about like, hey, if you're going to do a food blog, you better just expect it to be for a hobby because you really can't make any money doing a food blog. And so it was kind of became this experiment. So that was in August. I think it was August of 2011. And we talked to some other friends and we're like, hey, how are the ads working for you? And I remember them saying that they were making like $100 a month, from ads or whatever. And in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, if we could make $100 a month, like we would have arrived. Like that would be it. Like that would be the ultimate. But yeah, we started out in our first month, we made something like $20 some, $21 or something like that. And then, it kind of becomes like, if you can make $20, you can make $40. And if you can make $40, you can make $80. And it's very scalable. And so that kind of became the new metric for us and like the new challenge more than anything else. Kind of becomes a game, it's like the gamification of blogging. Yes. But you're using your income as the reward or as like the metric or whatever. So
yes, which is awesome. And it can also be a little scary at times.
For sure.
Too. When things change and algorithms on Facebook or Pinterest or, wherever. So what did you guys use then for, in terms of, or what has been the best for you in terms of growth, or how did you sort of reach your audience? And because that's really what it's about. Like you're not going to make money if you don't have an audience. So how did you guys connect with your readers and an audience?
We're definitely we've been a slow growing blog. I mean, relatively speaking, I know a lot of bloggers who within a year, they're making enough that they want to leave their day jobs, and for us, that's definitely not been the story. So we started out, it's kind of always just been this slow upward trend. And we started with ads, and that was a piece of the income puzzle for us and building this into a business. But that wasn't necessarily anything super substantial. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't we had a ton of traffic, in 2011 and when we were starting that. So then I think one of the big things for us in terms of building and growing, not only in size and in traffic, but building the business was looking at what people were interested in or what people were hoping to learn or gain or what value we could give to our readers, even though we didn't have a huge audience. We had an audience and we knew that they were connected to us and we had people commenting a lot and we had good lines of communication back and forth. And so that's when I decided to write an ebook. And I initially was going to do a cookbook, e-cookbook, and kind of last minute, I just decided on a whim. I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to write about photography, and I had learned a lot. Go back, like I said before, go back to those first posts and look at my photos then compared to now. But all of that, I learned that through practice and trial and error, and so I decided to write this ebook with the intent of I'm just going to share this with people because I know there are people who are at the same level that I was when I started. And I know that it's possible for them to learn this. And I'm used to be a teacher. And so that was something I was really excited about. So I did this ebook, and it wasn't I launched it and it was oh my gosh, look at all the sales coming in. Not at all. It was very much just trickle sales, really, really slow start, slow growth. But I think the product was valuable enough to people that they wanted to share it. And we had an affiliate program set up. And then that kind of snowballed into a system referral system, basically, where people would share it and say, hey, this was a helpful thing for me. And then their followers would come and check out the book. And in terms of building, I don't know if this is exactly answering your question, but just in terms of building it with a business, I feel we were able to build the business and build the income side of it using a valuable product, even when our audience wasn't massive. And I still kind of feel that way. I mean, I feel we're really grateful to have the audience that we have. And it's wow, I never would have expected to have this many people reading Pinch of Yum is really crazy. But at the same time, we're not by any means, not even close to the top level food bloggers. And I feel my perspective has kind of changed over time, where I feel I would kind of place us in this mid range in terms of traffic. So I guess what I'm saying, this is my long way of getting to this, but my point would be if you have a blog and you don't have a huge audience, you still can build that into a business and into a source of income if you're providing a valuable product or valuable information in whatever form that might be to your readers. So it doesn't have to just be ads, and it doesn't have to just be masses of traffic. It's also looking at the value of each individual visitor and what are they looking for, and then how can you provide value within exactly what they're looking for.
I think that's so key. And I think, as the longer I've been blogging and I've been listening to sort of podcasts and interviews with other bloggers and people doing this, that I feel bloggers are more and more becoming kind of entrepreneurs, whereas before, I think people would be oh, that's so cute, you've got a blog.
Right.
And
yes.
Still sometimes people say that. But now that there are so many people who are finding unique ways to make an income and make a living, really, and they're being very creative and they're finding different ways. But what you said is really that key, is finding what value you have to offer and finding sort of the questions that people are asking or the thing that they need, and then finding a way to provide that.
Yep, for sure.
Food Blogger Pro is sort of a membership site that you guys have for training, because you saw that as a need that people had. So tell me a little bit about how that got started and how you guys handle running both that and a food blog.
Basically, what happened was when Bjork started writing these income reports, and he's always been the one to write them. I mean, he was kind of hey, what do you think about this idea? And I was sure, go ahead. I had no interest in the numbers or any of that stuff. So I'm please, by all means, take that and do it. So he's always kind of been the driving force behind the income reports. And once we started doing those, we really felt like, as it picked up and we went from making $20 to $40 to $100 to $200, and it just kind of started to snowball, we also were getting hit with more and more emails and more comments and questions about like, hey, how do I do this thing? Or how do I improve my photography? How do I add this? How do I improve my SEO, with search results for Google and all of that? And kind of like specific questions where we almost felt like we're doing some like kind of consulting via email, and it's just not scalable. Like we can't do that. Like we have to prioritize making this information like public. So multiple people are benefiting from this rather than the one-to-one communication. And that's kind of when we had the idea to create a place that would be like a central hub for all this information, kind of like a go-to resource for specifically right now for food bloggers about like all the things that we had learned and what was working and what was not working, and basically just develop this into like a little community. So in 2012, this is like a weird twist in the story, but we actually lived in the Philippines for a year. So we moved there, and I was working at an orphanage that my siblings were adopted from. I was a teacher there, and then kind of like on our nights and weekends there, we would work on Food Blogger Pro and developing that. So I think we had when we launched maybe like 200 videos, tutorial videos. And now we're up to like 300 some videos on the site. But basically it's like broken down into categories. So it'll be, hey, this is how you get started. This is how you develop your social media. This is how you develop your photography, all these different elements of food blogging. And then there's like a community forum where people can connect with each other and ask questions. And I don't know, just have a more like live element to that. And essentially right now, I mean, we both are fully invested in both of the sites, but I would say we kind of think of it as me being 90% Pinch of Yum, 10% Food Blogger Pro, and kind of like taking the CEO role of Pinch of Yum, whereas Bjork takes on kind of the CEO role of Food Blogger Pro, the 90-10 split, me coming over for the occasional support thing or whatever. So even though we're both really heavily invested in, I mean, to us, it's like almost one and the same almost, but we kind of each manage them separately, which is helpful for us just in having that kind of separation just of business and of like what we're in charge of and who gets kind of the final say on a lot of these things with each of the sites. So that's kind of the overview of what that site is and how it got started.
Well, kind of to follow up with that, I think a lot of people kind of wonder what it's like to work with your spouse on a blog. I have several friends who they were blogging and their blog took off so much that their husbands quit their job and are either helping with that blog or starting a new blog. And that scares me. Like I love my husband and we get along really well, but I don't know. I keep giving him ideas. I'm like, hey, I've got this idea for you to start a YouTube channel. And he's like, nope.
Leave me alone.
So how did you find that rhythm of being married and making the marriage work, but also, being business partners and working from home?
I feel like just how we relate to each other and like how we work together and stuff. And mostly just that Bjork is really nice, like really patient with me and really, cause I'm definitely not the patient one, but like it just has worked okay for us. It's like worked really well. And I think that's not true for every couple, just like every relationship, is going to be different. And I don't know, I feel like because of our experiences and then also just because of our personalities, it feels okay. Like it doesn't feel like, this is whatever. But some things that would contribute to that would be like Bjork has his own office. So like we rent an office space for him. And then, it's kind of technically, quote unquote, the Food Blogger Pro office. He calls it Food Blogger Pro HQ. But it's just like this dinky little office that's not that far from our house. And so we did have a time where we were both working from home, like full time. And it was okay, but it just wasn't awesome. Like you finish the day and you're like, well, here I am still at home and we've both just been home all day and it just kind of starts to feel really blah. So we rented an office for him. That's been like a really good decision for us just so that we can have some separation during the day. And then obviously because of what I'm doing with cooking and stuff, it makes more sense for me to be at home. But I will say that, for as good as it's been for us and like how how overall I feel like we've been able to make it work. You know, that doesn't mean that it hasn't come without a cost. And like when we were in the Philippines and we were developing Food Blogger Pro, like while living in a developing country, while having no friends around and like being totally isolated and, you know, in a confusing new culture and all of that, like that was a really stressful time. And so I don't want to paint the picture like, oh, it's so great for us. And, you know, it's always been great. We're really proud of Food Blogger Pro and we're really proud, you know, of all that is. But I think if we were to do it again, we would really, I think, take better care of our relationship during the time that we were building it. It was just a really stressful, tense time with, you know, how it's going to be when you're working on something so high stakes as like developing a business with anyone, it's going to be high stakes. And then when it's your spouse, I think there are benefits to that in that you know each other and you can be like really completely honest, but then there are also downfalls to that because that person is also your everything else, you know? So I think it's a balancing act, and I definitely think it's not for everyone. For us, we've been able to make it work, but we have also made some pretty intentional decisions to like separate our days and to just try to really protect the relationship while continuing to work together. So
I love that idea of him having an office. Like, I think that would be like if my husband and I were working, I think we would need some kind of separation like that. Just for that sense of like reminding. I mean, it's almost, you need that space. And then also it's like a real reminder, like we're really working. Like,
yes,
we're not,
right.
You know, like we're not hanging out at home. This isn't like, let's not fall into the trap of like, oh man, I'm just feeling like watching Netflix at 1 p.m. You know?
Yes,
not that we'd ever do that. If you're thinking about working with your husband, you know, full time, whether it's blogging or something else, like how was your relationship before?
And I feel like it, you know, it just comes back to like having that solid base. Like at the end of the day, you're business partners, but you're also like, you're so much more than that, you know? And so, I think that's really important and insightful.
It can be really hard too to turn it off. Like I find myself, you know, when my husband and I are hanging out at night, if we're watching Netflix or doing whatever, we're hanging out, it's very easy for me to like work, you know, and get online and get on social media. And some of the times what I've started doing is asking him like, hey, are we like intentionally hanging out, or is it okay if I just go schedule a bunch of stuff on Twitter while we're watching, you know, whatever it is we're doing? Because otherwise I work all the time.
Yeah. And we definitely, that's been true for us too. And like part of the being intentional that I mentioned, like we'll schedule a time to talk. Like I'll be like, hey Bjork, we'll be getting into bed and I'm like, oh, I wanted to talk to you about this thing. And he's like, no, leave me alone. You know, so then it's like, okay, we'll literally schedule meetings with each other, or like we'll email each other instead of talking about that stuff at home. Like we're just really, I think that's really important because it's this weird thing where like if you were working normal jobs separately, you would talk about work, like when you go on a date or whatever. But then when you work on the same business together and you go on a date, it feels like you shouldn't talk about it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it feels like you should, but that's your work. Like that's your life. And it just happens to be that the other person is also in that as well. So I feel like it's just a balance of setting boundaries and saying like, nope, not going to talk about this when we're laying in bed at night or when we're watching, you know, like we need to just turn it off and put that on the calendar for another time.
That's a great idea. And that sounds really formal, I think, you know, in terms of scheduling, but that's probably the best way to do it is really be intentional with that time and be intentional with the work time and the relationship time and all that. So I think I would imagine that you probably have to reevaluate every now and then and see, you know, kind of what's working and what's not. But yeah, that's just great advice about being intentional. Yeah. Well, in terms of food stuff, you know, do you get to eat everything that you make? Are you cooking like at dinner time? I know some food bloggers cook, like I sometimes cook like in the middle of the night and then take pictures whenever, or like on the random days my kids are out of the house so I can actually take a photo without them putting their hands and stuff.
Yes,
but
right.
Are you guys, do you find that you're making food and eating it? Is Bjork your tester? Are you your tester? Do you ever have like kitchen disasters?
Yes, definitely do have kitchen disasters. I actually, when I started, like I would never make a recipe more than once. It was my blog wasn't like, hey, I'm going to perfect this recipe and share it with you. Yeah. It was like, hey, this is what I made and what I thought of it. You know what I mean? Kind of like take what you want from that. So, but now as, you know, as the blog has grown and it's become more of a business and it's my full-time thing now, like it's not just a hobby. it's become more important for me to like actually test recipes, which I don't love. I just don't love it. Like I like cooking a lot, but I really don't like, continuing to make something 5 times until it's perfect. Like I really don't like that part of it. But kind of what I've settled on for right now is that I'll make something twice, and every recipe twice. And so like during the week, this is kind of a new thing for me, but it's good if I say it out loud, then maybe that means that I'll actually like stick to it, which is a good thing. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'll just cook throughout the week. So like cook at dinner time or, maybe lunchtime for me if it's something quick and easy. And on the weekends and kind of like normal cooking times. And that will be like my development time. So, the other night I made something for dinner and I was like, wow, this turned out really good. I might add this, this thing to the sauce, and I might change this. And then I think it would be ready for the blog. And so then as I kind of develop those throughout the week, I set in my mind, for the following week, like what's going to be my one photo day. And so this is like a really new thing for me, but I'm really just trying to streamline my process, because to set everything up and take the pictures and then to go back and forth with that so often it's just not super efficient for me. I don't have a studio, so like I'm getting out my boards every time and I'm like setting up my reflectors and everything. So I've kind of decided I'm going to try to do all my photos on one day. And at that point, I would have already made the recipe once at a quote unquote normal time, like for dinner or something the week before. And then I just take one day and just like really, really hit it hard and make like all the recipes and do all the photos for the following week. And it's funny because you would think like, oh, you can get so many done. But I'm doing it all myself. So like I'm making everything myself, and this is how it is for, I think, 99.9% of food bloggers. If you don't have like a dishwasher, like literally a person dishwashing for you, and like a person prepping food and a person running to get the camera and the reflector, like you're doing 5 people's jobs essentially. And it's all you. And so probably the most that I can do in a day would be like maybe 4, maybe 5 if they were like easier recipes. But that would be like my whole day on that occasion, whenever is going to be my shoot day. So yeah. And we do eat all the food. Like we give a lot of it away. We have family that we've gotten to know that's our neighbors, and they have, young kids, and they're both working full time, and neither of them really like to cook. So it's super fun that we can just, say, hey, I'm dropping off this food on your back step, like enjoy, and they're like, great, thanks. So it's really great to be able to like know people, who want food and who can use the food, because there's only 2 of us. We can't go through it that fast, but I'm like really intentional. I watch Bjork like a hawk. Like every day I'm like, did you get a lunch? Did you bring a lunch? What are you having for lunch? I put a little sign on the door. I'm like, make sure you take a lunch, because we have so many leftovers and I hate wasting them, So yeah, we do try to eat like most everything that we make. And yeah, it's a task. It's like, I can't complain about it. It's a wonderful task, but I definitely have to be intentional about that.
Yeah, I find that for me, I plan, especially if it's a dessert, I have to plan making it around an event so that I don't eat a batch of cupcakes,
Yes.
over a couple of days or something like that. So that helps me. But I love the idea of streamlining. And I think, especially for, just getting that whole setup, because that is such a setup. Well, I feel like you have such a distinctive style, both of writing and also in your photography, that you've developed your photos. Like I can tell what photos are yours without the watermark for the most part. I mean, every now and then and that's hard because there's people that have similar styles, but I think your style is very unique. So how did you kind of come to develop both your style of writing and also your photography?
Well, it's really funny that you would say that about the photography, because I feel like no way have I found my style in photography. I feel like it's this constant, like kind of live and die every photograph. Like, what am I trying to do and what's my style? Which is funny because I went to a photography class earlier this year, and the teacher of the class said that she said, usually, you as yourself, as a content creator, can't articulate your own style. But if you were to ask other people, like they know what your look is, and it's sometimes just hard to see that, like for ourselves. So anyway, so I feel like with my style of photography, obviously a big thing that impacts that is like the equipment that I'm using. And I feel like my style has changed with every new lens that I start to use. And I recently, like, I think it was probably almost a year ago that I started using, because it was like around my birthday that Bjork got me this new lens, which is a macro lens. And I started using that, and that, in and of itself is going to kind of create a different look for my photos. But I think honestly, like on my list of things to do today, like this very day, and I'm not making this up, is like to really sit down and just think about a little bit about like branding and relating that branding then back to the photography. So I've never been the kind of person who, always has the same, like I don't always use the same background, or I don't always, have the same number of photos, or I'm a little bit more free spirited in that way with the photography. But I would like to have more of a clear, for myself, like I would like to have more of a clear definition about what that really means and what I'm all about with the photography. So that's kind of a long jumbled answer about the photography. But about the writing, one of the things that I have heard multiple times that was really valuable advice for me is like, write the blog that you want to read. And I, was reading a lot of blogs. Like when I first started blogging, I don't read that many, like I don't follow them, consistently anymore, just because it's better for me to like, just, I don't know, kind of be out of the other people's stuff and just really focus on my own. But yeah, like reading other people's writing that I've enjoyed has been really inspirational to me in developing my own writing style. So I would read, sometimes it would be other food bloggers, and I'd read how they would write about food and enjoy it, just enjoy reading it from a reader perspective. And so then it's like, well, if you enjoy it, that's probably pretty close to what your own style is. And so just trying some of those elements in my own writing, and some of the writers that have been inspirational to me, like aren't even at all food writers. Like they're not bloggers. They're not talking about food. Like it's just books that I'll read, and some are funny and some are more serious. And there are different elements of each of these kind of like people that I read from or take inspiration from that I then try to use in my own writing.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I think the hard thing for bloggers is often, learning from people, but not emulating somebody else's style.
Yeah, right.
Finding the things you admire,
yep, and
kind of learning from them, but then taking and figuring out what your own is. And the same with photos as well, because I think, I've heard the advice, if you're trying to figure out how to style a photo or figuring something out, go to something like Pinterest or Food Gawker even as maybe better for this, and see, whatever you're making, search it within there, and then see how different people, what their take is. And there's a lot of different takes, and food photography, I think, is always evolving, and it's hard to find that balance between being very branded where people can kind of recognize your style of writing or your style of photos, but also you don't want to get bored.
Yeah,
and,
right.
You want to be able to like reserve the right to like change,
yes,
and have people stick with you, but also still be recognizable as you and your brand.
Yes. It's like so spot on with some of the stuff that I've been struggling with lately. Just like that's exactly how I feel, because on the one hand, it's like I, as a business owner and a person who likes to be efficient, like I just want to be really streamlined and I want to be efficient, and I like the idea of everything being the same and consistent. And on the other hand, it's like the reason I love blogging is because of the artistic creative side, and I love having the freedom to like play around. Like that's one of my favorite things. And so kind of trying to balance those two with branding kind of mission or like branding themes that allows for some flexibility, it's a challenging thing. It's a current challenge for me.
Well, and I think trying to balance as well, sort of that you want to have personality and you want to connect with your readers and your audience, but you also want to be professional. And so finding kind of like, I struggle with how much do I share on my blog, and do I need to be like, hey, so this week I'm really busy, so I'm not writing, or this week I'm doing something different, like how open are you, and, figuring out what that level is and how far at a distance you're holding your readers, and kind of what that looks like. And that really just is different for everybody. And it may even change, for one person. It may change from year to year depending on your goals and those kinds of things. So blogging is not static.
No, not at all.
It makes it exciting, but can also, you got to kind of keep up and maybe be asking yourself those questions as you go.
Yes. Yep, for sure.
Well, I want to close up just asking, what are some tips that you would give people who are food bloggers? Because I feel like the landscape has changed so much and it's so very crowded. And, what advice would you give the food bloggers out there?
Okay. So a lot of times I hear like split perspectives on this in terms of like, should you start it immediately as like think of it as a business and start building it as a business right from the get-go? Or should you just kind of do it for a while for the love of it and let it kind of go where it might go? And my leaning is really strongly towards just start it for the love of it and just let it go where it's going to go. I think and part of that's because of my own experience, because like that's how it was for us. But I think you're okay. If you're going to start a blog, or if you have a new blog, like you're not going to start out making millions and having a bajillion followers. Like it just takes time to build that. And if you're not rewarded by just the process in and of itself, then it's going to be really hard to sustain that, and you're going to be miserable. And you know what I mean? If you're trying to work it up to a certain point and you just like there's no reward in it for you, just intrinsically in the work, like that's just yuck. That's painful and miserable, and you're going to feel disappointed and let down. But I think if you start it for the love of whatever it is that you want to blog about, in my case it's about food. And if you just are comfortable saying, I'm probably going to do this for a while and I would still do it if I wasn't paid for it, then I think that sets you up really well for the long term, because you have the intrinsic motivation to keep coming back to it. And one thing we always say, Bjork and I always talk about, is like the 10 months versus 10 years. And I think you have to take a long-term perspective with it. Not to say like when you start, you have to know that you want to do it forever. But I think it's not like about getting rich quick. And it's not about like, a magic thing, like, whoa, the magic life of bloggers. Like this is, for us anyways, I know this has been true. Like it's a long, slow process of growth. And the biggest, most important thing in that growth is your ability to consistently show up and keep posting and keep getting better with your content. And if you're not doing that for the love of it, then it's just going to be really hard to sustain that beyond the 10-month and kind of like thinking about that 10-year mentality. So that would be my advice, would be like really find something that you love. And another thing is like, maybe it's not blogging like in the traditional written sense. Like maybe it's, I was mentioning before when we talked, like we're just getting started with our own podcast, and like Bjork is like, oh my gosh, this is why I shouldn't write blog posts. I should do podcasts. Like that's just a better fit for him and a better, method for him to like express what he wants to express. And so I think that can be podcasts, that can be video, that can be, maybe something photography focused, maybe something that's more focused on the writing, but find whatever it is that you really love, because that's what's going to be the fuel behind it. And I think for me, that's just a strong belief that I have, is that you really have to have that at the core if you want to keep going. And I mean, you look at all the successful bloggers that and it's like, what do they have in common? Well, they all keep doing it. That's like the one thing that they all do. It's like you can't dispute that. They all keep coming back and doing it. And I just really believe that it's too hard to do that if you don't really love what you're doing. So I would say find the thing that you love and just like latch onto it, and don't be afraid to like change as you go. Don't feel like you need to have all of it laid out perfectly in the beginning. Like just start, and you'll find out what you like and what you don't like, and you'll get better at things. And I think the most important thing is the start, the do, and the love what you're doing.
That's really great advice. And I think whether someone is just starting out or if you've been blogging for a long time, thinking about those core questions, like, do you love it? Yeah. And if not, maybe, if you already have an established blog, like it's okay to rebrand. It's okay to change and find those things, because I think your readers and your audience can sort of smell the authenticity. And if you're burning out, you're not going to be creating great content. If you just feel like it's something you have to do, and people sense that. I think they can sense, I think in your blog, you can sense that you love your food, and you love doing what you do, which is great. And I think that's one of the main reasons people come back, is that it's when you love something, it gets other people excited about it. It's kind of infectious. And that's a great kind of infection to have, is to pass on that love.
Perfect
for whatever
to say
it is.
That way when we're talking about food too. Just like get the food love infection. Just get that.
Yes, you can totally trademark that. I'll give that over to you.
Tagline.
Your new tagline, the food infection, pass it on.
That's funny.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kirsten.
Okay, so the real question I have for you guys at the end of this episode with Lindsay Ostrom from Pinch of Yum, the question I have is this: what do you think about the whole idea of doing it for money or doing it for passion? For me, I want it to be both. Like, I really do want to have that dream of monetizing my passion, but I've also heard of kind of the dark side this year from a lot of people who have burned out and have said they really love their passion, but they want to have the freedom not to be making their full-time income on it, that they felt less stifled and enjoyed everything more when that wasn't their full-time income. Now, this is not my full-time income. In fact, I'm still working on building even, the side income part of it. But yeah, sometimes it does kind of get stifling and weird. And I think you have to find that balance and what works for you. So I'm curious to know what you thought about what Lindsay said about how you should do it for the passion, not for the money, because I see so many people in Facebook groups every week kind of talking about how they're starting a blog to make money, and here we go. And, I don't know, there's sort of this dream out there that you can just start a blog, write an ebook, make $1 million, and people are selling that. And I don't know. I'm more on the passion side. So I want to do both, right? With creative writing, I would love to make a full-time income with this business and blog and podcast. I would love to make a full-time income. That's my goal. My other goal is to help people and connect with people. And I want to do both. Now, if push came to shove, I would say that I would more stay on the side of helping people, because I can tell you right now, I'm already doing a lot of that for free. Okay. Lots of free content every week coming your way through the podcast, which take us hours. Even this interview, which was recorded a year ago, even just setting this back up took hours. Putting out, free guides. I had the recent social media strategy guide, which is 30 pages of free, offering you guys the free modules of courses over at creativewriting.com/courses. I'm doing a lot of stuff for free. Okay. So obviously I would do it more for the help, but the goal for me is to have it become a full-time income. So we'll see. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and we will be starting a discussion in the group, which you can find at creativewriting.com/community, or tweet at me. Okay. At Kiki Mojo. That's where you can find me. So we can talk about this. What do you think about passion? What do you think about monetizing your passion? Is it dangerous? Where do you fall on that line? Is it practical for you? If you're supporting a family full time, then you may have to say passion's awesome, but right now we need to put food on the table and pay the mortgage. So it looks a little bit different. It goes back to your why. All right. Well, I'm going to leave you with this, but I'm really, again, thankful that you guys are here and listening. And again, if you're not a food blogger, please don't miss the next couple weeks of episodes. Trust me that I am going to pull some great stuff for you guys out of these interviews with people that maybe you don't know of yet, but are really awesome, amazing bloggers who have fantastic business savvy and smarts to share. All right. That being said, I hope you have an inspired week.